Hi, I'm Dr. Nadia Mohandisi for the Readiness Support Center, and this is Semper Gumby, a podcast about emergency management in the Corps of Engineers. We'll cover topics about disaster response and recovery, FEMA mission assignments, and Corps-specific response authorities under which we operate, for things like flood fighting and coastal emergencies.
Thanks for joining us in the second episode of the Stafford Act for Senior Leaders podcast miniseries during this COVID-19 global pandemic. Today we'll be covering a few key things senior leaders should know about FEMA, including a basic overview of their organization, as well as their senior leader positions, and a few of the key FEMA-led response nodes during a Stafford Act event. We have with us again Ray Farnell, our audio expert at the Readiness Support Center, and together we're going to do another Q&A session to give an explainer for our senior leaders who may not be familiar with USACE support to FEMA, or for those who may need a refresher since their last event. So let's get started.
Okay, Nadia, let's just cover from the beginning. How is FEMA organized?
So FEMA is organized regionally. There are 10 FEMA regions throughout the U.S. with sub-regional offices in Puerto Rico and Hawaii, and then, of course, the higher FEMA headquarters in Washington, D.C. Now, what's important to note is that FEMA regions do not align to USACE divisions. And so there are many instances in which USACE divisions may cover multiple FEMA regions, or multiple divisions may cover the same FEMA region.
Well, let's talk about the key FEMA-led response nodes in a Stafford Act response. Let's start with FEMA's National Response Coordination Center, or the NRCC.
Yeah, so the NRCC is located at FEMA headquarters in Washington, D.C. It's a multi-agency center. It coordinates the overall federal support for major incidents and emergencies. They coordinate at the NRCC with the affected FEMA region and provide resources and policy guidance in support of a specific incident. So the staff there consists of FEMA personnel and then also the appropriate emergency support functions from various federal agencies and other appropriate personnel and agencies. For example, we have our USACE liaison to FEMA stationed at the NRCC and FEMA headquarters as well.
Okay, so that's the NRCC, or the National Response Coordination Center. How about the Regional Response Coordination Center?
Right, so each FEMA region has what's called a Regional Response Coordination Center, or an RRCC. Now again, this is a standing multi-agency center that FEMA operates in each of the 10 regional offices. RRCCs provide response and recovery support to each of the states and tribal governments within the regional jurisdictions. Now, the RRCCs function as the regional interface between states, territories, and tribal governments and the FEMA NRCC, maintaining situational awareness and executing mission objectives until a JFO or Joint Field Office opens. Now, we'll get to that in a little bit. But the RRCC provides federal support for activities responding to federally declared disaster response. They coordinate personnel and resource deployment to support disaster operations and prioritize interagency allocation of resources.
Let's talk a little about the Initial Operating Facility, or IOF.
Yeah, so the IOF is another important response node, and that's typically located in a state emergency operations center during an event. Now, these are not standing facilities. They are established only when FEMA takes action in anticipation of a presidential declaration during the period between a declaration and the opening of a joint field office. Now, only key personnel critical to immediate incident management functions, such as the IMAT, or Incident Management Assistant Team, are deployed to an IOF, or Initial Operating Facility. And the IOF closes when the joint field office opens.
So that leads us to the JFO, or Joint Field Office.
So the JFO is the temporary federal facility for working with the impacted state, local, tribal, and territorial coordinating officer to meet state, local, tribal, territorial, and insular area assistance requirements and priorities during an event and after an event. JFO provides a central location, so it's either a single facility or multiple facilities for multi-agency coordination among federal, state, tribal, and local governments, the private sector, and some non-governmental organizations with primary responsibility for response and recovery efforts. Now, if an incident impacts multiple states or regions, a separate JFO might be established for each declared state in that instance.
Okay. Nadia, talk a little about FEMA's branch or division offices.
FEMA branch offices or FEMA division offices are federally leased facilities, or they can be co-located in a county or city emergency operations center that supports geographical operations, and it's typically led by members of the Federal Coordinating Officer, or FCO cadre, who are not serving as the event's FCO.
Now let's look at a few of the key FEMA leaders during that event. Talk about the national administrator and the regional administrator.
FEMA's FEMA's national administrator is FEMA's most senior leader. This person must be confirmed by the Senate, and it's kind of analogous to our chief of engineers. It's the top person in that agency. Now, under the national administrator, you have FEMA regional administrators. These are the heads of particular FEMA regions. Sometimes they're appointed by the president, but not always.
You mentioned the Federal Coordinating Officer earlier. What is the FCO?
The FCO is the FEMA employee who is appointed by the president to coordinate all federal assistance in the designated area following the declaration of a major disaster or emergency under the Stafford Act. So the FCO is the person who leads all field operations on behalf of FEMA.
Next, I want to talk about the Incident Management Assistance Team, or the IMAT team leader.
The IMAT team leader is, the team lead of the IMAT. And the IMAT is a full-time rapid response team with dedicated staff able to deploy within 2 hours and arrive at an incident within 12 hours to support the local incident commander. So the IMAT team lead leads field operations on behalf of FEMA until an FCO is designated. Now, there are several IMATs within FEMA. There's not just one, which is an important distinction.
Okay. FEMA has an operations section chief, right?
Yeah, actually, there's several. It's important in an event to understand kind of different section chiefs, branch chiefs that you might be in coordination with. So the first is the FEMA Operations Section Chief, or OSC. That's the person who manages all tactical operations in progress related to the incident. He or she tracks or monitors mission assignments to ensure that agencies that are mission assigned to carry out response activities are providing the necessary support to the affected states, territories, or tribes. And then we have also a FEMA Infrastructure Branch Chief. Now, this person is responsible for the coordination of infrastructure-related activities performed by staff assigned to the infrastructure branch and the field leadership of FEMA's Public Assistance Program. Another person that USACE might interact with that's important for senior leaders to know is the FEMA Logistics Section Chief. Now, this person provides all incident support needs and logistics, with the exception of logistics support to air operations, including all facilities, transportation, communications, supplies, equipment maintenance, and fueling, even food and medical services for incident personnel, and all off-incident resources.
Nadia, you mentioned the Public Assistance Program, so let's talk a little about the main FEMA programs that USACE leaders should be aware of.
Sure. So there are 3 main programs that senior leaders should be aware of. Now, it's important to note that each main program has many sub-elements, but for the purposes of this podcast, we'll just go through the main 3. So the first one is individual assistance. Now, this program provides direct assistance to individuals and households, as well as to state, local, tribal, and territorial governments to support individual survivors. Now, this is eligible under emergency declarations and under major disaster declarations. And there is not a cost share for these programs, with the exception of 2 of those sub-elements. I know we weren't going to talk about them, but this is one important distinction. So all individual assistance sub-programs are 100% federally funded, except for 2. And that is 1, the other needs assistance, and 2, transitional sheltering assistance. And those are subject to that 75% federal, 25% non-federal cost share.
What's the second main program?
The second main program is public assistance, which we talked about a little earlier. Now, this program provides grants to state, local, tribal, or territorial governments and certain private nonprofit organizations to assist them with disaster response and recovery, including things like debris removal, emergency protective measures, which is temporary work, and then permanent restoration of facilities. So this is eligible under both an emergency declaration and a major disaster declaration, and it's subject to a cost share. So the sub-elements are subject to that 75% federal, 25% non-federal cost share.
And the third program?
The third program is hazard mitigation. And this program provides grants to states, tribes, territories, and local communities after a disaster declaration to protect public or private property through various mitigation measures. Hazard mitigation includes long-term efforts to reduce the impact of future events, but there's limited funding. So recipients and local government officials must make difficult decisions as to the most effective use of those grant funds. Again, this is also eligible under EMDECs, or emergency declarations, and major disaster declarations, or DRs. And it's, once again, subject to that cost share. So 75% federal cost share and 25% non-federal typically.
Nadia, where can senior leaders go to find more information on this topic?
All senior leaders are encouraged to contact their district emergency management branch or their division readiness and contingency operations branch or division, or any of their personnel. the ESF3 permanent cadre, their ESF3 team leader or assistant team leader supporting the region if it's during an event. And there's also some different training opportunities if you are interested in finding more information. We have the USACE Civil Level 1 videos and the 2019 ESF3 Field Guide. Those are both found on the Readiness Support website, which is rsc.usace.army.mil. And then, of course, FEMA has a very robust catalog of distance learning programs, independent study. So you might want to check out FEMA IS 100C, which is an introduction to the Incident Command System, or FEMA IS 800C, which is an introduction to the National Response Framework. But we'll stop there. And Ray, thanks again for all of your help. We hope you found this helpful and relevant for the next Stafford Act event in which you may be involved. So thanks for joining us, and thanks for listening. Stay safe, stay healthy, and wash your hands.
That's all we have for today's episode. Thanks for joining us, and we hope you've learned something. Please subscribe to our feed and check back for future episodes. I'm Dr. Nadia Mohandasi, and this is Semper Gumby.